Greetings and welcome to another edition of Between the Lines. I am your host, Karanja Matson. Today we discuss matters on access to justice in Kenya. Access to justice is a fundamental legal right that helps in establishing and maintaining the rule of law in any country. So today we discuss what are the barriers that have been there and how can we work in helping deal with all these barriers in our country. And in studio today we have Mr. Kioko Kivandi. Welcome to the show.
Asante sana.
And Wakili, Mr. Biko.
A pleasure meeting you. Thank you so much.
Okay, so keep sending in your questions and your views using the hashtag Between the Lines. The show is Between the Lines. Mr. Kioko,
Yes.
Maybe you could tell us about the Faculty of Law Legal Aid Project in Egerton University.
Thank you so much. As you said, my name is Kioko Wakivandi. I am a journalist and a journalism trainer at Egerton University, where I am also involved in this project that we refer to as the Faculty of Law Legal Aid Project. Because I have said that I am a journalism trainer, so someone will want to know what I do with a project that is being run by the Faculty of Law. I am the project's media and communication advisor, and my role in there is to push for visibility in media and so on and so forth, and also to explain to communities, to our audiences in details, what the project is all about. So this project, whose acronym is FOLLAP, is a project that is now 1 year old, and it is a project that is under another project by the UNDP, United Nations Development Program in Kenya, and it's under an umbrella that we refer to as the Program for Legal Empowerment and Aid Delivery in Kenya, or in short, PLEAD, which is a program that is being implemented in a partnership involving the government of Kenya, the European Union, the United Nations Development Program, which I've just said, and civil societies towards improving delivery of justice services and use of alternatives to imprisonment in the country. Of course, one of the other key players in there is Kenyans. Kenya is like an umbrella of UNDP. A project that is under UNDP. So now in Nakuru, we are running this project in 6 sub-counties. One of them is Bahati, the other one is Nakuru Town West, the other one is Naivasha, Rongai, Molo, and Subukia. And what we do in this project, generally, we implement Article 48 of the Constitution. And Article 48 of the Constitution is on access to justice. Of course, under that, then we also implement another law, which is you want to see it as law, is Legal Aid Act of 2016. And under that, we have a way, which is it is explained in we have the way that all this will happen, which is now explained in Legal Aid Action Plan. So the Legal Aid Action Plan, in a way, explains how then the Article 48 of the Constitution and the Legal Aid Act 2016 will be implemented in the country. And one of those ways is enhancing or facilitating certain institutions to offer legal aid in the country. Right? Those institutions may be civil society organizations. They may also be, for instance, as Biko may want to share with us later on, they may be LSK, the Law Society of Kenya, or now, and this is where now Egerton comes in as an institution that is dealing with legal education, an institution that is teaching lawyers, right? So that's how we come in. And what we do then is we usually, first of all, sensitize communities to understand their rights and to know how to claim those rights. And one of those rights is on legal representation, which it has actually been seen that without legal representation, some people end up, missing on their rights. Because of the way, our society is. Biko may want to explain later on that the corridors of justice, as simple as they may look to people who are learned, sometimes are very treacherous, right? They are very long and unending, right? And even the language that we use in court sometimes is a little bit complicated to a lay person and so on. Even just standing and saying "my lord" and so on, we just take you to court, and the moment you see the gowns that the learned friends put on, whether it's on the bench or the bar, you get confused, right? So we are telling people that they have a right to legal representation, among other things. And what we do among the cases that we handle then in offering this legal aid service is cases on children matters, cases on police brutality, cases on matrimony, cases on, or you want to say matrimonial conflict, even succession, okay, property ownership, even matters on public interest, other matters on governance and administration, and so on and so forth. So we have been inviting communities or residents in Nakuru to come to us. We have a legal aid clinic which we usually offer at the grassroots. We also have a call center, and I'll be sharing our toll-free line as the program goes on, for people to just get to us. We have realized that sometimes people are unable to claim their rights simply because they don't even know how to go about it.
Yes.
Like we always say, my people perish for
Lack of wisdom.
yeah, lack of wisdom, lack of knowledge, lack of information, right? Yeah. So in a way then, through this project, then we are also implementing even Article 35 of the Constitution on access to justice, access to information, but on access to information on matters
Of legal
justice,
Okay.
and so on and so forth.
And we'll be coming to look at those, especially on matters of police brutality, because some of these things, as we even witnessing in our country and even in the continent, it continues to be a very big issue that even continues to go unaddressed. Bwana Wakili, maybe for those who are watching and would want to understand, what is access to justice?
Access to justice pertains to capacity to be heard when a party has a grievance or has a complaint or a contest that one needs to be determined either way. Access is permission or facilitation to get to court, to get to a forum of dispute resolution, to be heard. It doesn't necessarily have to be a courtroom. There's so many other avenues or fronts offered in the society currently, from which places we can extract legal services or solutions to our problems. It could be informal, it could be formal. Access to justice also entails the willingness to surrender or to permit oneself to find a solution when there is a dispute. Access also relates to authority. How permissive is a society towards that which we are fighting for or that which we are contesting over? Biko and Kyoko are fighting over a parcel of land somewhere in the village. How capable is Kyoko or Biko to access the forum upon which solutions towards this problem would be resolved. That is access to justice.
That is access to justice.
Thank you.
And now, let us look at the obstacles to this access to justice. What are some of them that continue to cripple our country?
Predominantly, we realize that the legal system, which is intended to offer the justice we are seeking, is entirely colonial. The language is English, it's colonial, it's British. The training of lawyers as well as judicial officers is in the common law system, which is colonial. The education system itself is colonial. It is not tailored to meet African demands and the societal expectations. You realize that we own land communally. We also live, marry, inhabit, graduate in life, socially construct, most importantly, in a colonial structure. So the first obstacle would be, one, the language of communication. Take, for instance, a grandmother in the village somewhere in Bahati, Subukia, who's about 90 years old. Those are the major land owners. Those are the major resource owners. Yet the conflict now pits them against younger generations. How would that older lady access court and communicate in a language that is competent or levelized as against yours? You realize that there will be an upper age you'll be occupying against such a person. So the language of communication becomes the first barrier. However, that has been mitigated with a heavier education investment onto the youth and the populace, which we hope going forward will escalate further and benefit everyone. The second one is the cost. You realize that most of these services are not free, in as much as we are fighting to have them free or subsidized in a way. The cost of litigation in court, for instance, is quite exorbitant. It is not easily affordable or of convenience to all the parties, so that whoever has got resources is more enabled to access justice compared to the one who has limited resources. As such, this becomes an immediate impediment. Thirdly, and most fundamentally, are cultural biases. Take, for instance, matrimonial causes like Kyoko talked about. We live in a patriarchal society. Patriarchy is so dominant that a woman married to another family will have limited avenues of accessing justice because of the fact that you marry into another family. And we still have this firm belief that in our societies today, wealth is owned by the masculine side as opposed to the feminine side. With that, it hinders women from accessing that which is entitled to them, or they are by culture barred from raising certain aspects of wealth or proprietorship contrary to the Constitution and Article 40. Yet today, the same Constitution permits them to access to own property, but it inhibits them by virtue of culture. Culture which places property ownership on the male. We still marry onto the man's side. We don't marry into the woman's side. So culture is the greatest impediment in terms of resources that are owned communally, like trust land amongst the Maasais, the Samburus, and any other community. Basically, you find that property is still in the ownership of the male side of that family. So against my sister today, against my mother today, the society will recognize me more than they would recognize them culturally.
And
maybe I could also add.
Yes.
Within moving away from that explanation, you may also want to look at barriers to access to justice, also in terms of structural issues, in terms of even the way development has been implemented in our country. So much so that while, in the modern way, in the modern city or nation, we seek justice, for instance, in a court of law.
Yes.
But you realize that in the way we have developed since independence, right? There are certain regions that lagged behind.
Yes.
The marginalized regions.
Yes, the marginalized regions. So much so that accessing justice, accessing a court of law for someone, let's say in Baragoi, is much more difficult than someone accessing a court of law
in the CBD
in Nakuru. So that in itself, and those are structural barriers. Okay, the structural issues to do with development, but they are also impediments to accessing justice for the society.
More fundamentally, we could call it governance issues.
Yeah.
We've had sections and flanks of this republic. Like yesterday, Justice Maraga was in Nyatike. Nyatike is a constituency in Migori County. They have never had a court. The closest they access a court to is about 170 kilometers. Ask yourself if there is a lady whose child is not being maintained and has to go to the children's court. Easily that child would not access justice by structural aspects of governance. Take for instance murder charge in Baragoi, as sampled by Kyoko, or in Turkana. It's only recently that courts have been expanded in a view to enhancing access to justice by doing what we call dispersal or decentralization of the courts in those regions. But that also depends on budgets, depends on legislation, depends on agitation by the sectors of the society concerned. And to this end, it becomes a crucial impediment. So as long as we go forth, let us also strive to change our governance structure to facilitate.
Okay, and we will be coming to look at that shortly.
Thank you.
Now, I want us to look at the barrier of discrimination, especially maybe against women,
Yes.
on the basis of culture. How do we mitigate this?
Mitigation, the most important tool of mitigation against gender stereotypes and culture, or aspects of culture that are prohibitive, is education. You realize that, for instance, in those marginalized areas we've talked about, the most permissive tool for them to facilitate their progress forward is education. Once we educate sectors of the society, even those that were impervious before, they tend to bulk out and tend to soften their stand towards a more facilitative and a more receptive approach to what hitherto was believed and cultural, and to what is now more modern. Like we've seen Kulea Josephine in Samburu, we've seen the program we have over here at FOLLAP. There are more ladies, for instance, within the system, and with that they could spread information that is beneficial to the societies from which they extract. With that, the society gets to realize that against women, as they have done before, more particularly in property ownership, there is need to make synergy towards a common ownership by all and competence by all. That way education facilitates. The other thing is awareness, like what you are doing now on TV. It means you are sensitizing a society that has constantly been bent towards suffocating the space of the girl child. And that also has helped much. You see legislation in Parliament, we have had gender-based laws being enacted, or there is a spiraling debate about gender representation, for instance. We did hope that women in Parliament would work towards a more fair society and towards a common agitation. And a greater number of them have worked hard towards that. I've seen Bosch Soleil, I've seen Susan Kihika here trying to, fight. I've seen Rosa Buya, I've seen Millie Odhiambo, I've seen Pesaris, a greater number of women. Though if we pull all of them up, they will easily spread by way of an easier dispersal to the gender that has been discriminated against.
And I would like maybe to throw this one to you, Kyoko,
Yes.
on the issue about gender discrimination, in line with the discussion about the gender representation. While the Constitution does provide for that, there have been questions and even instances of remarks by several politicians saying that being a lady or a female is not a weakness. You should go out in the field, seek for these elective posts. What do you think about that?
some of these things just need to be responded to as bluntly as the owners of such sentiments have put them across.
Yes.
And just call it the way it is.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of misinformation. It's a lot of nonsense, really, by the people bearing such sentiments, because they don't really understand where we are coming from. Because every time we are looking at, men vis-a-vis women, what we want to look at, we want to arouse that question of equity. And when we are talking about equity, the definition of equity is that the playing field is not level. And therefore, it is important for us to help that side which is not level, so that then the players have a common
Field.
They have an equal ground.
Yes.
Okay? And in Kenya, and Biko has really explained very well, that our background as a society, and perhaps in several other societies, is that we are a patriarchal, humanity in itself is patriarchal, right?
Mm-hmm.
Even from the Bible itself. The Bible is heavily patriarchal, by the way. Most of the religions are very patriarchal. ATS, African traditional societies, are grounded on a patriarchal platform. And that meant that the female gender, from history, okay, was always dominated. And here we are then trying to say that let us have a playing field. It is okay when someone says, okay, being a woman is not
A disability.
it is not a disability. It is okay. But look at it this way. Perhaps we are studying for an exam. My name is Kioko. I have a sister of mine called Mwende. We are studying for an exam. No, let me not even say my sister. Let me say my wife is called Mwende, right? We are studying for the same exam and she's pregnant. Okay? She's the one I impregnated her, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And it was important so that then we can have a family.
Yes.
Okay? Do you think the playing field will be the same? That is just one example, and there are several others. Okay? And these others could even be, we are in a political ground, chasing the same post, right? There are certain stereotypes that will be brought in by the society, which will be so heavy on the woman than they will be on me.
Yes.
Okay? Some of them, people will even pick, oh, this is a single mother. You see?
Yes.
This is a single mother. Okay? How can she lead when she is a single mother? That will be so heavy than if a man is a politician and is known to have several kids out of wedlock. It really will not matter to a man, and so on and so forth. So actually, yes, if you deconstruct it that way, in Kenya, and perhaps in several other societies in the world, being woman is in a way a disability.
Mm-hmm. And okay, let's now talk about cost. The cost of maybe the legal fees that the lawyer Biko has mentioned. Some of these charges or the amount to hire a lawyer for representation, the charges are normally so high. What is FOLLAP doing in regards to this?
Thank you so much. In this project, we are working very closely with lawyers to implement or to offer what is referred to as pro bono services. There is another name the legal fraternity have for pro bono. It's pauper briefs. Okay, so pauper briefs is where you have a case, and we just get you a lawyer, and if there is anything to be paid, then it is the very, very minimal. Okay, so that is what we are doing, and we are doing this in collaboration with the Law Society of Kenya, this region. Right, we work very closely with the president and several other members. That is why actually you see me with Biko here. And apart from that, the other thing we do free of charge and actually automatically is that the moment you just walk into our offices, we offer you advice. It's like that advice you would have got, that consultation, that very initial contact you would have had with a lawyer, we give you that free of charge. And if you do that with a lawyer, the first thing will be open a file. It costs, there is some cost to opening a file, right? In the very way you do it, there's consultation with a doctor and so on and so forth. So that we offer free of charge. And there are actually several cases that we have now where we have lawyers pursuing them on pro bono services, on pro bono services or pro bono basis. Yes.
And now let me throw this to you, Wakili.
Yes.
Pro bono, about the pro bono services.
Yes.
Do the lawyers give it their best?
Yes.
When they're representing someone for free versus when they're representing someone when they're being paid? Because that was a question actually. In the build-up to this discussion, someone had asked, do lawyers normally give it their best?
Yes.
Because I'm thinking, forgive my skepticism, but I'm thinking that when I'm working for free, I will not have the drive.
Yes.
But when I'm working on a pay,
Yes.
I will have better drive. Please explain it to us.
Well, as an oath that we take upon admission, it's mandatory that you take that oath with a view to dispensing justice whenever you have a chance to, and that is always. Most importantly, whenever a lawyer takes up a case on a pro bono basis, or what we call the pauper brief, as earlier explained by Kyoko, then one, remuneration has to be on the back burner. It has to cease being a drive. Secondly, the nature of commitments that find us in pro bono briefs, we are human beings at the end of the day. Beyond the money, the flashy life you see around, we are human beings at the end of the day, and we extract from the same society where everyone else does. And the drive is usually there. Of course, I know there are those margins of error a few times here and there, but for some of the most sensitive cases in this republic, they've come to the fore because lawyers pushed for them to get there. Not just lawyers, institutions like FOLLAP that you find here. Take, for instance, the lady who was dragged on a motorbike in Olenguruoni. If it were not for the intervention of the Law Society, nobody would have bothered. We now have the police case in Makueni where a police lady is claimed to have chopped off the hands of a lawyer. Well, that could be at a different level because it involves one of us. But I know, for instance, ourselves, we dealt with the case of Linda Okello, the police lady who was in a short skirt. Should not have afforded probably a competent or heavyweight legal services. But it took the intervention of our Professor Tom Ojenda to have that done. We've also seen interventions like Mutula Kilonzo Jr. intervened in a rape case in Ukambani. We have seen Haminwa, the Tandaza Mwandaza case, the lady from Kwale.
Yes.
Haminwa is 84 years old. He does not need the drive of money to do anything. He goes in for it for passion. I've also seen Narok and the land issues that have been raised over here. Most of the time you found that you'll find that it is not the money. We must create a clear dichotomy. If it is going to be money, please charge and charge, agree with your client. But if it is a free service, a pauper brief, kindly take it on a pauper brief and render your services as articulately as possible. In fact, go to court today. Most of the murder cases are given lawyers by the court itself as a mandatory requirement under the Constitution on the rights of an accused to legal services. The courts now prefer that lawyers do that, and they are the ones to organize your facilitation. The client does not do that at that point. So essentially, monetary elements always add impetus to these processes, but there is always a clear dichotomy by training to know which cases will require money and which ones will not require money, and where it is only your knowledge and services required.
So do we have several cases that maybe, as a lawyer, you would feel like this one maybe is too big for pro bono?
It comes in, of course, by evaluating the status of the person you are with. One society, you know, we have a society that is more of a commensal, a society that also thrives in taking advantage sometimes. For instance, if Kyoko were to open some medical facility here for free, he will not even have the doctors to run it tomorrow because they will be overwhelmed. The same thing with legal services. People are hurting out here, it's a fact. Once they do hurt so much, if you avail them such opportunities, there are those who, while capable of paying for their services, will eat into those who are unable to. That's why you find that most of these services are being offered in the marginalized areas, the slums, the disadvantaged areas, because clearly that's where you'd find people who are deserving of such services but cannot afford them. You cannot, for instance, attempt to take free legal services to Milimani. Everyone over there should afford it, save for maybe the workers. You can't, for instance, take legal services freely to Karen, whilst Kibera is lying on the other side. That's also just entirely lack of foresight and lack of practicality. That's why you find Kyoko going to launching this project, taking it to Bondeni, because that area definitely, there are people who deserve it. So if you evaluate and find that somebody is undeserving of free legal services, you have a right to tell him, you can afford it. Let me serve those who can't afford it.
Those who can't afford it.
Thank you.
Allow me to discuss the issue, the barrier
Yes.
on the resources
Yes.
in the justice system.
Yes.
For several months now, we've had a back and forth between the judiciary
Yes.
and the executive.
Yes.
The Chief Justice has actually called out the President
Yes.
for failing to swear in 40 judges
Yes.
into the
Judiciary.
judiciary. Do such issues like this also play a part in posing a barrier to access to justice?
We go back to governance that we talked about earlier. Governance is a question of politics. We have a very good Chief Justice, but a lot of fingers that have been pointed at him have been basically the aspect of his politics. He has never played the politics as smartly, as deftly. For instance, as Chief Justice Madan, the best CJ in this country ever did. Although Madan had the benefit in 1986, that is in history, of having been an MP, a minister, having been a Chief Justice. By the time he was being a Chief Justice, he had been a practicing advocate. So he had literally served every arm of government and he could have played politics. If you listen to Dr. Willie Mutunga, our senior counsel yesterday, explained to Jeff Koinange on the Jeff show, he was basically trying to allude to a political aspect in the rank of a CJ. So that Maraga is such a nice judge, but the trouble we have is Maraga is not a good politician, and that is what you need to navigate the minefields of parliament and the detonation of the executive landmines. You need a deft player to get that done. Without appointing 41 judges, one died, Okeche is being buried. It is not Maraga who's hurting. It is the common man who has to hurt. Narok, as a county, only recently got a Lands Court. Narok didn't have a high court. They were traveling to Nakuru. Samburu was traveling to Nakuru. Baringo was traveling to Nakuru or to Eldoret. We have Kericho going to Kisumu. Without those judges being appointed, one court that has practically been crippled is the Court of Appeal. My brother, hear this. Chief Justice Maraga was serving at the Court of Appeal. He went to the Supreme Court. That's a vacancy. Honorable Justice Mwilu was at the Court of Appeal. She moved to the Supreme Court. Those are two. Honorable GBM Kariuki retired. 3. Honorable Justice Professor Odek died last year, unfortunately. That's 5. We have the current Attorney General. was a previous Court of Appeal judge. That is 6. We have Honorable Justice Philip Waki of the Waki Commission, retired. That is 7. Honorable Azangalala, retired. That is 8. We do have Honorable Justice Al-Nashir Bishram, retired. 9. Those are 3 clear benches. Before that, we also have Justice Onyango Tieno, retired. Justice Mwera, retired. We have a total of about 15 judges of the Court of Appeal who have retired in less than a span of 1 to 2 years. They have not been replaced. That has crippled Nyeri, Court of Appeal. That has crippled Kisumu, Court of Appeal. That has crippled Malindi, Court of Appeal, and inevitably has affected Nairobi without those judges being replaced. The 40 judges who are to take their seats have not been sworn in. So you have an appeal in a matter today that is so sensitive. It's probably a tussle between brothers and sisters at home. It's probably a contest like now the revenue allocation. If it goes between Parliament and the Senate, they disagree. It goes to the judiciary. Which judge is going to listen to your matter when the ones who are supposed to listen have retired and the ones who are supposed to replace them have not been taken up? Let's go to the labor court. Employment disputes arise every day, more particularly during this COVID pandemic. People have been sacked. People have been terminated. People have been terminated unfairly, wrongfully. Which court is going to listen to them when we only have about 10 labor court judges in the country? It means you have to travel on a special condition to Nairobi. Nairobi is already congested. You have to travel to other courts within closer proximity. That is what has crippled the country, and that's why we plead with the president. Other than the ego issue between him and Maraga, and more particularly about the revisit, it should be magnanimous enough, because in 2013, the same court allowed him to be president.
Yes.
This today it is on your side, tomorrow it's on the other flank. So let's learn to be magnanimous enough, because with the failure in the legal system, the ripple effect of that would be so drastic in terms of more violence over resources at the base. And that's how we have Kioko now having to intervene through free legal services where none essentially should accrue, because brothers and sisters would be carrying machetes and pangas and weapons against each other because their disputes cannot be resolved. Had, for instance, the court brigade not gone to court in 2013, as it happened in 2007, what would have happened to this country? Those are realities that we must begin to pragmatically and with foresight and deep circumspection begin to interrogate and have courts with judges. We may have our own problems with the judges, some accused of taking bribe and all that, but deal with that once those judges are in the system. Those are regulatory problems, so that you cannot disregard an entire mouth just because one tooth is aching. You cannot discard a mother just because one child has been problematic. You cannot stop fetching from a river just because a village kid drowned inside that river. You cannot say you are not going to travel in a train because it derailed yesterday somewhere. We must begin to cogently and decisively look at our problems and solve them. So the judges ought to be sworn as early as yesterday for the good of the country.
A lot of wise words.
Thank
The
you
show
so
is
much.
between the lines. We are discussing, we are exploring actually the barriers to access of justice in Kenya. And the show has been made possible by the Faculty of Law Legal Aid Project, Egerton University. We'll take a small breather. We'll be right back.
Thank you.
Welcome back. The show is Between the Lines. We are discussing the barriers to access of justice here in Kenya, a show made possible by the Faculty of Law, Legal Aid Project, Egerton University. Allow me to sample a few of your comments. We have Balozi Daniel Nyetich, who says, say hi to Mr. Kivande. He's gifted on many fronts. Many Kenyans have lost or forfeited the rights altogether because of poverty or lack of information that they are given in mashinani. Ask him, what are the successes so far? We shall be looking at that. Celine Mujumba says, phenomenal minds, eloquent discussion. Wonderful. Mary Muturi says, very insightful. Happy to be watching. Duncan Matibe Oyash says, Salimia Kioko wa Kivande sana. Good work, FOLLAP. Thank you. So we start with the first that question from Balozi Nyetich. Mr. Kioko, what are the successes that FOLLAP has seen in the last 1 year that you've been working?
One of the greatest successes we have witnessed, and which we always report, is that aspect of sensitizing communities to, first of all, understand their rights and take up their rights. In many forums, and actually we've been working with Biko, and he's a very good orator even in the field. There's times we explain certain issues to communities and they actually get mesmerized. They ask, how come I had not known all this time, right? So in terms of passing across information, that has been a very great success, and we are very sure that moving forward, we have communities that are more empowered, more capacity. We have done a lot of capacity building for communities to take up, their rights and to claim their rights. Last week, for instance, on Friday and Saturday, we were in Subukia on Friday. On Saturday, we were in Kaptembwa, Ronda, Pundamali, and so on and so forth. And the moment we gave up our toll-free line, we have seen, quite after explaining, interacting with the community and explaining, the steps that they can take to even reach us and so on, our toll-free line, is always, is very busy now. Guys saying, just calling to say, I have this case, just before I came to the studio. And we also do programs. We reach out to communities through the radio, even on print media, and so on and so forth. Someone called me from Moranga, just explaining that first of all, he's disabled and he has an issue that he would like us to actually. So the amount of response that we are getting is actually overwhelming. That's one. The other one is that the number of cases that we have taken up, right? I may not just give the numbers now, but we have quite a number of cases that we are currently following up. Some of them are even public interest cases. One of these cases, for instance, is a case in Rongai, right, where a certain community bought land, and they even demarcated within that portion of land that this is where we shall build our homesteads, this is where we shall have our houses, and in between the houses, this is where we shall set aside land for setting up communal facilities for common good. And while they were doing that, just as we always know, this demon we always refer to as private developers. A private developer came from nowhere, okay, and claimed that land. Okay, we are following up that case. It is in Rongai. So by doing that already, you can always see that we shall mitigate. Okay, because sometimes what some of these people who come to push us down, what they just want to see is to see someone who is informed, who is following up the cases or our case, right? We usually say that you know, in the bushes, an antelope will be afraid so much if someone shouts to caution other people about its presence somewhere. So we have been acting as that person, cautioning people that there is actually an antelope here that is coming to do ABCD. So on that front, we are very proud. Okay, and of course the other bit, which is actually implied, is on matters of the capacity building we are doing to the future lawyers of this country. The students that are pursuing the LLB program at the Faculty of Law are being capacity, because they are some of the people we use in this project. So already they are interacting with the communities, understanding the issues that communities go through, and quite a number of them are also now understanding this program on offering legal aid, okay, on offering pop-up briefs and so on and so forth. And that is the kind of manpower we want to see in the legal profession. A manpower which is not just there for the sake of the money. A manpower which is inspired by the desire to serve humanity. Okay?
Very impressive. Wakili, let me ask you this. Let's talk about enforcement of the said justice. And as Kyoko had mentioned as we were starting, on the issue of police brutality.
Yes.
Do the police also understand the rights that the people have? And why is it so difficult? Because like even we have seen this several times where the police will be accused of infringing on someone's rights. Do the police know that mwananchi akona hii haki?
Yes, I have been privileged to deal with the police on both ends, on their side and against them. I have represented the police in various cases where they have been charged before court. I've also represented innocent Kenyans who have been harassed, some tortured, some even maimed by the police. We've done cases where lives have been lost. For a fact, we cannot lie to ourselves that we have a perfect police force. In fact, far be it from the same. However, we know that tremendous progress has been made into converting our police force into a service. However, there's still a problem with the recruitment of our policemen, and that is where the biggest problem lies. And if we do not tackle that problem, no matter how efficient, how clinical, how best we move forward, poorly constituted police force becomes a danger to the society. Do not lie to yourself that the police are not aware of what they're supposed to do. They're trained. They're taken through Kiganjo training, though it's a short span, but it is a training school. They're also given guidelines. In fact, there is no single day a policeman will go to the street for a riot, for instance, without a clear chain of command. And the commanders are generally senior people in the police force. They always take instructions. If they veer off, there should be penalty. However, we know that these excesses have been permitted over time by the society. And the leadership that has been more coercive rather than receptive to the members of the public. As such, we have generated a culture of intolerance towards the police, and the police viewing citizens as their enemies or as their adversaries. Though we cannot also lie to ourselves that we will live without the police, our security begins and easily ends with them. In fact, most of the crimes you see out here are perpetrated in part in collusion with the police. And that is where now the brutality comes in. What makes the police brutal? For instance, have we asked ourselves? Can we say they're provoked? If they're provoked, how should they handle themselves to avoid this? Can we also say or attribute this to police being overzealous in the execution of their duties? Because sometimes you find very innocent people like Baby Pendo in Kisumu. What did that little kid do? The Mwanzia kid in Embakasi. There's a young Muslim boy who was killed in Nairobi recently.
Moya. It's called
yes.
Moya.
There was the Mwandaza girl in Kwale. What wrong did those kids do to warrant death, for instance? You realize that those are excesses of the police, which unless we regulate and or we find a way of dealing with, will continue to spiral out of control. However, as citizens, we also owe a duty to ourselves to be safe and to avoid confrontations with the police. Though this country has got a culture where the only language that is heard fairly is a protest. So essentially, the police know what they're supposed to do. We cannot say they don't know. But they constantly run off the rails. When they do that, the only thing the law should be in a position to do is to place in permanent and durable sanctions, via which no policeman would dare go beyond that. But I also urge the citizens of this country, let us also avoid unnecessary agitations and or rivalries with the police. That way we'll all keep within our streams. But whenever that occurs, please look for representation. Sometimes you cannot do it by yourself. You need the force of a lawyer. You need the force of instruments like what Kyoko is now spreading out for your representation. Sometimes you need an extra force to have the police act.
Impressive. Kyoko,
Yes.
what has the government done to ensure that this access to justice is a reality? And what has it not done?
The best that the government did, though I don't know whether we should give this credit to the government 100%, first of all, was the passing of the Constitution.
That's great.
2010. Why? Because of its Bill of Rights, okay, which all the time we've always said that it is very, very progressive and very ambitious. You know, some people say that we have the best Bill of Rights all over, you know, the world. That chapter is a very beautiful chapter, okay, and that is actually now even our project, for instance, is inspired by the Bill of Rights. Article 48 of the Constitution, which is on access to justice, and several other articles still that still fall within the Bill of Rights. We are talking about the rights of the arrested person. Even when you are locked, okay, we also have certain rights, okay. There's, for instance, a right that quite a number of Kenyans don't understand, the right to habeas corpus. That if you are to get lost, okay, then, and especially if you get lost within the hands of the police or the administration, then you can go to court and say and claim that right, and it usually means we need the body of so and so, dead or alive, just present it. That right in itself has really done a lot in terms of stopping disappearances, as were witnessed in the days before the 2010 Constitution, because there are quite a number of people who disappeared. Okay, you will even remember that even among the media fraternity, we lost a fellow called Bogonko Bosire, who up to date has never been found. Okay. And there are quite a number of people who would be just picked by the police and they would just disappear like that. Today it is not very easy for that to happen. Okay, so the Constitution that we gave to ourselves in 2010, that was a very big step. Whether we want to give that to that credit to the government alone, and that's a discussion for another day. You are asking about what the government has not done.
Yes.
The other thing is again now the proper implementation of the Constitution. Yeah, because what we have done is we have been cherry picking on the Constitution, that this article is beautiful, so let us implement this. This one is not very beautiful, we are not implementing. For instance, the Constitution is very clear in terms of separation of powers, right? But you remember what Biko actually explained, that even when it is very clear on the separation of powers between the different arms of government, then we have not seen the practical bit where we are, as Kenyans, we get to enjoy the principle of separation of powers. Okay, we always see a lot of influence by the and especially by the executive. Why is it that it's always the executive that is influencing judiciary and influencing the legislature? It's because it is the custodian of resources. Okay, as parliament, you say ABCD, the executive is not happy with it, it will say we shall revisit, and that revisiting most of the time is in terms of cutting your budgets. Okay, and the same has happened to the judiciary and so on and so forth. Even now, when on matters of legal aid, okay, it is just now that we are getting to be a little bit more very active in terms of implementing whatever we are calling the Legal Aid Act. But remember, I said it is Legal Aid Act of 2016. Okay, perhaps this is the first time you're hearing about it, and that's 4 years down the line.
Yeah.
One of the things that the government actually needs to do for residents, for citizens to claim their rights, is to pass across information. Okay, that's why we have Article 35 of the Constitution. That's why we have Access to Information Act and so on. That's why we even created the Office of the Ombudsman. Okay, so we usually pass laws. Nobody comes to educate us about those laws, and some of those laws are very critical when it comes to our claiming of rights. Okay, so we continue remaining in the dark, and that is a very big problem. And it's not just a problem with the national government; it is also a problem with devolved governments. There's a lot that is not being done when it comes to implementation of the Constitution. Perhaps, for instance, we could ask in Nakuru County, who can we pick? Which office can we immediately pick and say this is the office of the ombudsman, which is devolved? Because nothing stops the county government of Nakuru from having its own office of the ombudsman. We may not really call it the office of the ombudsman in the real definition of the word, but who would, if you were to, search for certain information, who would give you that information as a one-stop shop, and so on and so forth. Yeah, even when we are talking about those issues of police brutality and so on and so forth, we said in the Constitution, let us now even let us stop calling it the police force. Let's call it the police service and so on and so forth, right? It is there in paper. But why is it that to date, we still have, police molesting people in the way they have been doing?
And Wakili, as we wind up now,
Yes.
There is discussion as it continues on an amendment to several sections of the Constitution as it is.
Yes.
From a legal perspective,
Yes.
have we implemented the Constitution enough for us to amend it, or do we need to amend it so that we implement it?
The ideal situation should have been a total implementation, which, from what Kyoko says and what you have posited about, has not been done. We have only comparable to the South African Constitution in terms of progressiveness of the Bill of Rights. Under Article 43, we currently have socio-economic and cultural rights. That is where people should be entitled to housing, people should be entitled to education, and other economic factors like health. Health facilities, for instance, in Nakuru, are they at par? Are they at a percentage that as a citizen, you can competently say, I can go to PGH today and get services? We are not there. How does amending the Constitution or reviewing those chapters or sections or articles improve service delivery at that point? How does, for instance, altering the mandate at the top in terms of the political structure going to affect or positively impact schools, for instance, if we have not utilized what we have currently? I'm not saying I'm against the amendments. Of course, if you look at it critically, when this constitution was being passed, there are those who said no.
Yes.
They had grievances. Have those grievances been resolved? They have not been resolved. currently, the group now agitating for its reformation was saying, let us pass it, then with the teething problems, we will rectify. Is this not that opportunity from their side? The pro-constitution amendment are saying, we said, let us pass it with the defects. We amend it once we have seen where the problems are. It is a legitimate argument from their side to say then this is the time. The other side that said no was saying no for certain reasons. Are those reasons crystallized? They have not crystallized. Is this not the moment then to effect those that they wished to be changed? In my opinion, a middle ground would be reached where we do not flex our muscles as to political egos and political contests. We should look at what Mwananchi on the ground would have in terms of benefit. Whether it is rank, let it be facilitative and let it be implemented. Even the new one that we are trying to come up with, what guarantee do we have that it's going to be implemented? That should be our worry. It could be a perfect document, it could be an imperfect document, but implement it even a quarter. For instance, how is the amendment intended going to cut corruption? Because we pilfer a lot of resources at the base. How is the amendment thought about going to improve education, to facilitate access to justice? How is it going to improve money in our pockets so that we can fend for ourselves instead of being fended for by the government? How is it going to secure us so that we don't have to worry about police brutality on the streets? How is it going to improve Medicare in the country so that we do not have to worry about COVID? We have to worry about other problems in terms of our forward progress. That is what we should now be focusing on. And it still narrows down to implementation. If you can't implement that which you planned, no matter how ideal, even if you came with the 10 commandments down here, straight given by Moses to the earth today, as long as we intend to sin, we'll still have a problem. So we must plan to implement.
You must plan to implement. Kyoko, maybe your final words, comments, as you also share the contacts.
Okay.
Yes.
Maybe I would also add my voice on that. As a person, I'm actually against change of the constitution at this point in time. And my reason is, I mean, the narrative that has come out so far is that narrative, that summary by the president that we need to move away from that mentality of the winner takes it all. For me, the problem has not really been about the winner takes it all, but it has been about that our elections have been shrouded by a lot of mistrust. The electoral process has been shrouded with a lot of mistrust, to the extent that even as we want to say it's been a culture of the winner takes it all, then the other culture also is that because of that mistrust, then that loser cannot trust it all. So is it possible for us to change our mentality as Kenyans, our voting process? Can it be so stain-free to the extent that if I were to lose, I would lose in such a way that I have nothing to question? If that would be achieved, for me, then that would be, the Kenya I would want to see. So I want to invite people to continue coming to our legal aid center. And for those who want to reach us over the phone, and this is actually a toll-free line, our number is 0800 720 448. 0800 720 448. Yeah, so you give us a call on that. The cost will be on us, and we shall attend to you. Some of the issues that residents have been raising don't even require people to come to the office. Some of these issues, we are dealing with them over the phone. Yes.
Impressive. We have been discussing the barriers to access, or the barriers of access to justice here in Kenya. In studio, we've been having Kyoko Kivandi, who is a journalist here in Nakuru, and also a media consultant with the Faculty of Law Legal Aid Project in Egerton University, as well as Wakili Biko, who has been sharing insights on what it means to have access of justice here in Kenya. I've been your host, Karanja Jackson. Until next time, stay safe.
Thank you.